Many traditional cultures have their young men and women go walkabout to look within, find meaning, and face who they are. Now, the extraordinary art of Driaan Claassen gives those inner thoughts a visual language.
I'm Driaan. I'm an artist, sculptor. I've been working with reticence for 12 years, and this is my studio. I address mental health by using my work as a visual metaphor to touch on physical and ethereal subject matter like the neural pathways or the consciousness within the mind, to bridge the gap between what happens inside my own imagination or psyche and how I can portray that to the viewer or the buyer.
Struggling at school, unable to qualify for university, Driaan found 3D animation, and with it, his passion.
My unique style is defined by a simplification of visuals and shapes that I experience within my own mind. Having dealt with mental health issues like depression and anxiety, my work was a means for me to create a roadmap for me to understand my own internal processes. And so all of the work that you see is a simplification in material to present that to the community at large. Having a space like this really affords me the opportunity to explore my medium and my work narratively as well as physically in a very calm and effective way, to think about what impact I have on society and my community at large.
Working through his questions on life via sculpture soon got expensive, so he had to justify his art by selling it, and he did.
A piece like this is a really good example of bringing in very complex material processes into one shape. This piece is called SSRIs, and it is a narrative symbolic gesture towards growing new sort of potential into old neural pathways. And so this piece inside here is the neural network, whereas these are the sort of new potential growths and nodes that allow you to reestablish a new relationship with old patterns of behavior. For this particular piece, we use ceramics as the internal structure that show a warmth and a gentleness, while using the copper growth crystal process to create these nodular crystal-like formations that show the growing potential.
Seeing her son's promise, the love and nurturing of Driaan's mother, Alet Kotze, has proven the major influence in his unique work.
A good example of one of the complexities of the process of manufacturing is my wooden sculptures that come from sculpting in a 3D design software that then gets processed and printed out through 3D printers, that then gets carved and sanded down and finished in the studio, whether that be a glossy matte finish or even a wood stain finish. All of these things are being done inside of the studio and to our finish and quality control. The ability to have control over this entire process really gives me an agency in being able to create the work in the particular way that I envision it, rather than handing that process over, and so that's a really important step. Because I work with such clinical processes as well as quite abrasive and dirty processes, I've chosen to partition my studio space off into two distinct sections. One being very fine work like the 3D printing, the crystal growing process, which cannot have any contaminants that might destroy the machinery, and the other side of the manufacturing process, which is quite wild, dusty, and full of chemical processes.
Working at the outer edge of his ability is where this artist is happiest. A place where logic ends and intuition takes over.
This is where we do the copper plating solutions. This is where we grow the crystals. And so in this process, we have an electrical current that is passing through a very saturated water solution that has copper in it. We then have anodes and cathodes, which allows copper to pass through the water to deposit onto the surface. Now, these growths are defined by both the base shape and the current that's running through the actual object, and plates this entire piece with copper. And as you can see, it's quite heavy, and so quite a lot of copper is being deposited onto this base vessel. So here's an object that really shows the order that we can achieve. both in the sense of how it uses natural laws in the same way that nature grows plants. There's a certain amount of order in it, but also how difficult it is sometimes to see that underlying pattern in the same way that you look at a tree. There are patterns underlying the structure of nature, but one needs to distill it in order to extract those patterns. And so this is a really good example of that. Bringing different materials together is an understanding of constraints of each one of those material manufacturing processes and limitations. Something like the ceramics and the crystals is two opposite manufacturing processes that work quite well together. Something like the wood, however, would not be able to be introduced to something like crystal growing. Those two elements just simply don't fit.
These physical representations of ideas stir much the same wonder as telescopic images that capture the birth of stars.
When coming to my studio, you will find a large variety of different sculptures in different mediums, each provoking a different emotion and quality of engagement and asking questions that one can reflect on the self and through the nature of consciousness and the mind. My three main categories of pieces that I appreciate the most is, for instance, the wooden sticky thoughts piece, which references the battle of the mind in regards to ideas within the conscious. The second one is the calcified thought forms, which is an interaction of the copper with the wire that talks about the foundational thoughts being placed as a principle to grow from. The third one would be neuroplasticity, which is a visual exploration of what it would look like for the consciousness to be interacting with the neural pathways to create new means of actions within the physical world. Having such a wide variety of materials that I've worked with, I've been able to distill the essence of each material. And so once I've had a collaboration of the materials coming together, there's a complexity both in the material process, but also a complexity in the narrative that allows me to transcend the simple communication and to tell a more complex and more convoluted story.
Seeing his work as a positive reflection of dealing with struggles with mental health, the artist insists that if you have a reason to live, you can surmount almost any obstacle.
My ultimate aspiration is to create work that is beautiful. The main reason for this is that it allows me to bring the viewer's guard down before introducing them to the narrative structure underlying my work. And so that allows me to communicate something quite difficult sometimes in a more relaxed and vulnerable state. Reflecting how far I've come, I'm really excited to know that this is only the start and that there is so much more to come now that the foundation of the narrative and the work is established.
Having developed this visual language to navigate his own troubled waters, Driaan Claassen now wants his art and design to help others create their uniquely positive energy. Get more of the Insider Essay online. Follow, connect, engage, and be inspired to live better with the Insider Essay. Watch the show Monday evenings at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 on S3.